Hi, in this video I'm going to go through 11 things that I learned writing my first screenplay. They're all hard lessons learned, so stick to the end because every single one of them has great value and will hopefully help you on your own screenwriting journey. So first things first, getting your ideas. For me personally, I got an idea when I went up to Liverpool out with a mate, and we ended up hanging out with these gangsters. Essentially, we got in their car going to a club and we didn't get out for a number of hours, and it was terrifying. They talked a lot, gave me a lot of ideas. I ended up writing a book all about it and a screenplay. So what did I do beyond that? I had anecdotes from friends who'd also been around Europe. These gangsters talked about Europe and Amsterdam and all this stuff. And there was also this amazing story about the Swedish biker war, a real war that happened between these Swedish bikers back in the 90s. And I thought, you know what? This all sort of feels like it's could all coalesce. It could all be parts of the same story. So, I just had to give it time. I wrote everything down and could see the way certain characters and things would overlap. I gave it time and I dreamt about it. So much changes after a good night's sleep. Whether you're writing something fictional or you're filming and editing a corporate video, you wake up the next day and you're like, now I know what to do. Now I know how yesterday's perfection is in the morning. It's like, it was kind of good. It was mediocre, but we can make it better. So you're always ready to move on stronger and better once you've slept on it. So those are my ideas those are the things that I do to ideate and to move things forward. Okay, so next is nailing the structure. Once you've got all these ideas, how are they going to sit together and how do you structure them? Well, one of the best ways is to pick up a good book. So Making a Good Script Great by Linda Seeger is one that I got recommended by a doctor of screenwriting. That's how good he is, a guy called Alex Ross. He recommended this book to me. I found it very useful, and I've also picked up Screenwriting for Dummies. It's also just very clear and very helpful. The one thing about classical narrative structure is that it's a thing. It is structure. Audiences are subconsciously aware of it, and there are things that have to happen in a script at a certain time in order for an audience to feel like they're getting the movie. Now, as a writer, you don't want to fall into the trap of just giving people rehashed stories. You need to somehow find something original and often subvert what your audience's expectations are, and use structure. If you know what they're looking for, then you can give them a little sucker punch and surprise them. So it could be a laugh, it could be horror, it could be a revelation of something new where they're not expecting it, but there's a point in time in a script where things have to happen, and that's how I would nail the structure, is get some books. The fact is, writing a screenplay means you have to do a lot of research and go to a lot of different places. Okay, so be motivated. That's a bonus tip, that one. Okay, right. Next, making real characters. Now, the thing about characters are that often they need some baggage. They need a ghost. What is it in their past that's haunting them and motivating them? And that is often what is brought out within the story, and that you often find is helps to give them an arc where they will change, where they have engaged with what they were in the past, and now they've had to go through something to become this something different. So when you know what has been in a character's backstory, it will help you get to where they're going to go. Okay, so what are they running from? And is obviously this the key to it. And the good stuff happens when these characters bump into one another and create conflict. Contrast is what makes good storytelling with characters, characters that are just the same. They're, obviously if they all get on, then there's no conflict. So, have to think about what it is that grates with these two characters. It could even be, for comedy's sake, something physicality. You could have a tall, skinny man and a short, fat man. It worked for Laurel and Hardy. Those kind of things. The contrast, someone who's a thinker. In my book, I've got a student who's out on a night out and a gangster. So one is a very visceral person who's, out for what he can get and in it for the money, and a student who's a thinker and who's much more eloquent. And so, within your screenplay, you may have a main baddie, a nemesis for your protagonist, but each of the characters should have something that helps to create sparks and interest and humor. So just trying to find those things that make these characters real and engaging. Don't be precious about them. Push them, make them do stuff. They're fictional characters, right? So, if you're writing stuff like I did, where the scenario was essentially me, but you take it out of your comfort zone and just make these characters, just push them right on the edge, put them in a scenario where they're going to say that one thing that will trip another character and make them build the story and create the conflict. I had great fun doing that. So in terms of building out your story, so you've got your ideas, you've looked at your characters, the next thing is to create your roadmap. So simply put, grab an A4 piece of paper or a fresh document, and on one page you want your 15 moments throughout your story, and that will be your blueprint for what comes next. And what comes next is to build out some scenes. Now for me, I've got, in a 3-act structure, Act 1 is a quarter, Act 2 is like half, and Act 3 is your final quarter. So split out your plot points between those, obviously in terms of size. So, and when you look at it within the narrative structure, you'll see where it's working and where you'll need to just adjust your scenes and scene length in order to create the peaks and the troughs where you want to build up the narrative and go to a moment of spectacle where something changes. A moment of spectacle could be like a car chase or somebody getting shot or something like that. Somebody falling out of a window. It depends what you're writing, but you will figure that out, and that will change depending on the kind of story that you're writing. So in terms of building that out, once you've got scenes, writing real talk. How do you do that? Go speak to people. In my book, in my screenplay, I've got a character who has been in the army. I've never been in the army. I know some people who have, so I went and had a chat with them. My friend is a major in the army, so he knew all of the different battalions and all of this stuff. So I had a very different perspective from him than I did from, say, a foot soldier who I met quite randomly when I filmed a friend's wedding. Turned out this guy was driving a coachload of people, but he'd also been in the Royal Marines, which was fascinating. And I got stuff from him I would never get from anyone, I don't think, if I knew them personally, because there wasn't any other personal baggage. So what he gave me was just the facts and detailed facts. It was brilliant. So get used to speaking with new people. If you're an introvert, you're going to have to really work on this. But you know, when you go to parties, when you go to events, when you get the opportunity to engage with somebody new, you can potentially be bringing home a lot of gold, because you will find somebody that, like I say, doesn't have any baggage or history with you, so they end up giving you really, really good stuff. So that is not only the content of how they what they're saying, but how they say it. It's interesting just to, you know, on the one hand, take on the words, but also, what are these people like? What's their temperament like? How do they move? Are they a generally optimistic person or a negative kind of person? Do they throw out a lot of kind of like warmth or energy? Are they kind of cold? You know, all of that can really help you to build out your characters and write stuff that is more engaging. Beyond that, you need to find a guide. For me, I had several guides in the writing of the book. First off, I was friends with an actor, and they'd been in some movies and stuff like that, so they had a feel for the dialogue. And my first draft, which was pretty awful, he picked out and he could sense what was good in the characters. And interestingly, the characters that he really liked were the people that I'd actually met. They were the most rounded out. And so, you know, you will get something specific. An actor knows characters. Okay, so beyond that, I also sent my about a third revision draft to a man called Tony McHale, who has devised shows for the BBC and done very well with that. And I got good feedback from him, and I also put it to the mentor, Alex Ross, who is a script writing mentor. So they all have different areas of expertise, right? So one guy is acting, one guy is producing, another guy is screenwriting. And you will get something different from whoever you ask for your feedback from. And no matter what feedback you get, take it on board. Always listen more than you talk. But when you get that information back, you need to, like at the beginning of this process where you're ideating, when you're getting your feedback back, I think it's important to get it all down and take time just for the dust to settle, because it all gets a bit heady at times. And I think once you've got yourself clear, you've looked at each of these different bits of feedback against your script, and then you just have to take a moment to think, what was my original idea? What makes my movie my movie? What's so wholly original about it? And be prepared to just peel away at those bits of feedback and use what you need. Don't sacrifice the original kernel of an idea that you set out with at the very beginning. Yeah, like when I met up with the gangsters and spent time in the car. You can't take away, that's the thing that is your germ of an idea. I think that's important to work from. Beyond having a mentor, continue to learn from the pros. And what I mean by that is, go on YouTube. I found it really, really useful to when I found the channel from Tony Zhou. That's spelled Zhou. I'll put the link in the description down below. Tony Zhou has an amazing channel which is about film analysis, and I found it very easy to understand and revelatory, and I felt that I could take what he analyzed and how he showed what was happening within certain movies. For instance, working within a frame, having Chinese martial arts, for instance, they show everything within the frame. They don't cut away to the kick. It's not Van Damme where you get 15 angles of the same spinning roundhouse. You get it in camera, in shot, and how much more powerful that is, the power of the cut. And that helps to inform you when you are writing dialogue or writing action and thinking about how you are engaging with your audience and telling your story. As well as Tony Zhu, the one person I think has been the most important is Michael Arndt. Again, another weird name, Arndt. Michael Arndt wrote Little Miss Sunshine, worth checking out, and Toy Story 3. Obviously, brilliant movie. His YouTube channel is so good, I'm surprised that it's not a pay-for course. I learned so much from that. Tip my hat to Michael Arndt. Fantastic information there about story structure and about basically screenwriting. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. So definitely check that out. And they help to explain things in ways that is just super easy to understand and invaluable. Point number 9, thing I learned, I started off using Highland. There's lots of apps you can use to write a screenplay. I started with Highland. It's free, it's good. It just wasn't the one for me because I wanted to be able to write anywhere. So on my phone, on my iPad, and on my laptop. So I found the only thing for me was really to get Final Draft. So it was about 10 quid on iOS. And to be fair, I could probably have managed just on that, but I also wanted it on my laptop. So it was about £150 or something, which if you're serious about screenwriting, it is an industry standard piece of software. So go with it. Okay, so now we get to some of the juicy stuff. Fixing what's broken. Number 10. When something's not working, it can be worth trying to, again, just try and push it back a little bit, the story. Look at your story and say to yourself, who is leading this scene? Who is the most important person in this scene? And how are we engaging? How do we feel about them? And is it the right person to be telling this part of the story? You may have a single character who you follow throughout the whole story. In my story, I particularly, because it's got good guys and bad guys and a lot of grey kind of like characters in between, people who are sort of slightly corrupted, I wanted to tell it from multiple perspectives so that you could just about feel for everybody. I didn't want bad guys to get 2 to the dome and you didn't care. Even the really horrible characters, I just kind of felt like, you know what, you've got to kind of show how these people tick, show there's some kind of humanity. You don't have to like these people, but you have to care, just somehow, in some way, the humanness of it all. Otherwise, your action isn't going to feel dramatic. You're not, if you don't care about people, then I think that's the worst thing possible. You just like, just shoot them already. I don't want to do that. And I think it's in this day and age, I don't think we should be ever saying, just shoot him already. Especially in a grounded, dramatic thriller. So learn to take your who you're focusing on, and move your camera or move whoever is you're writing, and move the camera around. So it could be that your story doesn't have to change. You just need to look at it from a slightly different perspective. You know, I've got a major pivotal scene at the beginning of my screenplay, and for the first few drafts, it was written from somebody else's perspective, and I couldn't quite figure out why it wasn't resonating. And it was because whilst my protagonist was in that scene, I wasn't really focusing on him. I was focusing on all these bad dudes doing stuff. There wasn't the suspense. And the thing was, you had to have the engagement with the protagonist to understand how his moral code was being battered and pushed to the limit by what was happening. So it's understanding the power relationship between characters that will help you to make a scene dramatic, because as soon as your audience knows that you know, the person that they're caring for has a sensibility that is being encroached on or whatever, you can feel the drama rising, you can feel the suspense. So yeah, that's my tip on you know, fixing scenes and getting your story to work and feel like that scene is not just a bit flat. Now, the other thing that you will face at some point or another is that you'll be in front of your laptop, your device, and it's just not coming out. The good stuff's not happening. So the way that I have found it really helps is don't just sit there and expect 20 minutes of TikTok to you know, sort you out. The best thing to do is to get away from your device and do several things. The first thing I do is I will exercise, swim, run, or row. Really good. You can basically zone out when you're doing it. It brings your brain is having to work on the task at hand at a certain level. So when you then add in the problem that you're going to solve, the thing that's giving you kind of writer's block, and you think about that, I tend to find that my brain works a lot quicker, because your brain is just going, now, just do it. It's not, you know, if you just sat here in front of your device debating whether or not you're going to have another jolt of coffee or what you're going to have for lunch or whatever, anything else, you are actually involved. If you're in the middle of a swimming pool, you've got to keep swimming to the edge. If you've gone off for a run and you're a mile away from your home, you've still got to run a mile back, or at the very least walk back, and you're engaged in an activity. So giving your brain something else to do will promote the answers. Talk to yourself. It doesn't matter if you look a little bit crazy. Trust me, you will get a result at some point. The other thing that I do sometimes, I drive. I'm always consciously aware of what's going on, but in a similar way, it gives my brain something to do. And then the questions that I ask myself, I get quicker, better, and often just moments of inspiration by driving and coming up with it. So those are my tips for beating writer's block. And that's it. These aren't just some rules from a book. This is real stuff that I've learned from putting in the work, and I hope that they work for you too. So best of luck with your screenplays, and I will make another video later on, a bit more about my journey writing my first screenplay, The Compromise, and the novel too. So stay subscribed to the channel, and like this video if you got something from it. I appreciate your time, and again, best of luck with your screenplays. I'm Adam Loretz from the Filmmakers Workshop. I will catch you on the next one. Cheers.